Never, ever judge a book by its cover. A good principle to abide by, but not in this case. I took some recommendations, asked around, as well as did some deep web dumpster diving to find manga with the dumbest names. Some of you in the community post suggested PPPPPP, Onani Master Kurosawa, and Dog Ningen, but I've already covered these in the past. Which, fun fact, I am now a character in Dog Ningen. I have been for a while. What an honor. But those aren't the bad titles I'm referring to, with the exception of Onani Master Kurosawa. You could say every isekai that has more than a sentence for a title would work, but after seeing enough of those, and trust me, there are a lot, you grow desensitized having the premise be the title of the manga. It's the ones that I either couldn't wrap my mind around and laugh from the absurdity, or the ones that genuinely made me feel a tinge of anger. A lot of them were isekai. The goal is to find at least one that is better than the name suggests. I also won't be ranking these, since why would I choose what method of torture I prefer over another? Also, make sure to join the Patreon Discord. I think I'll start reading some stuff in there if that's something that interests y'all. So for part 1 of hopefully just one, welcome to reading manga with terrible titles. But before we talk about a bad title, we need to talk about a good one. In fact, one of the most iconic in all of anime and manga, Fist of the North Star. And brought to you by Figurama Collectors, they are putting out a Kenshiro vs. Rao statue, and it's taken 3 years to make, with 2 body parts for Kenshiro and for Rao, as well as 2 portraits for the characters as well. The design for this statue is immaculate, easily one of their best and my personal favorite that Figurama has done, along with the Ichigo and Ukiura one. But when it comes to this statue in specific, it's really all of the detail and the love that was put into this, as you could tell, even going down to their bases, which are always just as impressive as the statues. This magnificent piece will be available starting February 24th at 11 p.m. JST, and I genuinely encourage you to act as quickly as possible because these things tend to sell out super fast. So once again, make sure you check out the link in the description below and use code MASS35 to get a discount off of your order. And thanks once again to Figurama Collectors for sponsoring today's video. Do you like exploring, adventure, going underground? If so, then I know a few fellas in New York that have quite the portfolio. Dungeon Toilet is the name of the series, and I want you to try and guess what this could possibly be about. Well, if you guess the main character that spends each chapter, and I mean each chapter, trying to find something to wipe his keister with, then holy shit, good guess. Nah, deadass, this is every single chapter. He travels with his 2 female companions in this fantasy world, it's always a fantasy world, and makes everything either his toilet or toilet paper. It is infatuated with it. Black Torch had 19 chapters before it got axed, Phantom Seer had 30, Hunter's Guild Red Hood had 18, and Ayashimon had 25 before it was on the chopping block. Dungeon Toilet managed to last 55 chapters! Look, I know different magazines and all, but it's still depressing to say out loud. The main character is really the standout of this manga, as every series has those moments where the protagonist speaks and captivates the reader with his or her goals, beliefs, or struggles. In Dungeon Toilet, we get such brilliant lines such as, "My butt! A slime came out of my butt!" and Inayazumi Yotaro, an average high school student with an unaverage love for toilets. I'm sure some of you will find this amusing since it is meant to be a comedy, but I think this is just a shitty comedy in every way. It'll be a miracle if this video stays monetized, but if VTubers can get away with the stunt stay pool and the one Nair guy still has a channel, I should be okay. My Richard, use your brain folks, turns out to be a cute girl, is an example of personification gone too far. The main character is a high schooler who has never gotten a girlfriend, so he's extremely relatable for some of you. So he wakes up one day and his Richard is missing, and now there is a girl in his room, but it turns out that girl is his Richard. Richard feels responsible for him not getting a girlfriend because she's weak and tiny and wants to run away to India. No, I won't. I'm not gonna do it. I've done too many jokes already. I'm probably already, nope, I won't. So now the main character has to live his life with Richard and hopefully find a way to change things back to normal. The design of Richard, who is then given the name Chinkle, which doesn't sound all that better, but you know what, anyways, the character design is kind of genius, but well, at least took some balls to come up with. In some ways, I do think the comedy for this is a lot better than Dungeon Toilet. Not that it's ahead of its time or anything, but readable at least. Every chapter is just visual comedy and misunderstandings, which granted is like 99% of comedy in anime and manga, and stuff like Prison School thrive off of it, but I would argue most of Prison School is really good for what it's trying to do. But still, with this, it didn't feel like I was getting shafted like with some of the other stuff later in the video, as this didn't feel like the longest read. Still, the title of this manga is insane. I don't know how Japan gets away with it or why we continue to let them get away with it, but somehow this will actually turn out to be nothing compared to what's left on the list. Speaking of, in order to prevent myself from being put on a list, I didn't read this one, and I'd advise you all to stay away from it as well. titled Oni-chan is into elementary school girls. You know what? I usually read what I'm recommended, but surely you can all understand me drawing the line somewhere, right? This next manga isn't criminal, thank God, but the title was still enough to infuriate me plenty, since one of the main intrigues of a series is seeing how it will hook you and provide a conflict for the characters that they have to overcome. So why in the blessed name of Jesus would you call your series My Instant Death Ability is so overpowered, no one in this other world stands a chance against me? Immediately, that image of the dude holding out his arms with the garbage bags around him is what comes to my mind, but yeah, because like, what are you supposed to draw after one chapter? It starts off with the school bus being attacked by a wyvern, but then it is stopped by one of the boys on the bus who has a power to insta-kill things by just telling them to die. Later on in the manga, he actually tells someone to half die, which is so much funnier than I think it was intended to be, even though this does have a shitty comedy undertone. But before the wyvern showed up, a woman did, explaining the magic of the world and how she's looking for sages, in other words, normal people with magical prowess in this new world. But this woman and her ties to the sages would actually turn out to have a darker twist, which was a bit interesting. Then we get all the stuff with the wyvern, and then some of the students come back and try and bully the main character and make the main female their slave, but the fat one actually just wants to be Adam 22. Anywho, these bullies get dealt with, and then we follow the adventures of the typical I don't care main character and the overreacting female lead. I was given a possible explanation as to why manga authors do this for their titles from Captain Mac, but it hasn't been fact-checked. But it seems that the market is so oversaturated that some believe by putting the premise as the title, it will increase the chances of you reading it. Regardless, this manga does follow the premise exactly, and has the same feeling as every generic isekai. Some fantasy here, some fan service there, some modern comedy here, my will to live way over there. This wasn't the worst, but it was so boring and I was so indifferent, which was exactly what I was expecting to feel after 5 chapters. I'm sure many of you who watch me have played Bloodborne. In fact, I should probably get to streaming again sometime soon, but for those who don't know, Bloodborne has a status effect called Frenzy, caused by the player character trying to understand these inhumane eldritch horrors, and the brain can't cope fast enough with the information. I say all of that because the frenzy meter is starting to build up, and I may need to be heavily sedated by the end of this video. I attempted 57 times. I took 57 attempts at trying to one-take this entire title and read it all, but I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna just put it all on screen. And just give me a second. If there's a positive, it's that I'm growing more confident in my ability as a writer seeing this. The negative also being that the bar is so low to where I'm growing more confident in my ability as a writer seeing this. I was given a list of titles from the lettuce-eating walrus, and in that list of series, the one that stood out was The Invincible Shovel. I wish I could explain why. Maybe it's some repressed memory, but for some reason, this title was this close to making me not follow through with the rest of the video. The man learned to mine from his father and has done so for over 1,000+ years of his life, to the point where his shovel can shoot a laser beam, and in his own words, defy the laws of nature. He ends up saving the princess who ran away because her father was killed by the evil prime minister and blah blah blah, and they need to get these orbs and blah blah blah. It's so much exposition in this first chapter with one of the most generic storylines ever. It's like 7 Deadly Sins, but somehow 7 Deadly Sins was far more interesting for its beginning. But I kept on reading, and so the miner decides to help the princess since his father told him, always stop what you're doing to help a damsel in distress. She tells him she wants to repay him, and he states he wants a successor, which in his mind means an apprentice to teach all his skills to and pass on. But in her mind, she thinks he means a child. So that's a misunderstanding between these two that only gets worse and worse. And I promise I didn't keep reading this only because of the fan service. The princess becomes so amazed by the power of the shovel, by the way, that she painfully uses shovel puns for the rest of the damn series. And every sort of obstacle is immediately solved by this damn shovel. Immortal Army? Nope, shovel. Labyrinth that would take years? Nope, shovel reconfigures it into a straight path. It just keeps getting more ridiculous. In the name of fairness, though, the art is really good sometimes, and this is one I could see a lot of people enjoying. Not because it's good, but because it's bad, but it's the type of bad that could still hook someone, and they could be like, oh, this is kind of good. I don't know, y'all are weird sometimes. The next manga is, The next manga is Born with the Weakest Job. I worked my hardest to become the strongest tamer with the weakest skill. Fist punch.
God, it just never ends!
The main character, Orphan John, was born with the tamer ability and fist punch ability, which as the title tells you, are the worst abilities. He actually vents about it to the orphanage caretaker. Legit, he goes, I'm useless, that's why my parents left me. And instead of consoling the boy, the caretaker just goes, Damn, well, go pick these berries in the forest. But in that forest, he meets his friend Feral, which he tames and forms a close friendship with, and then it immediately gets killed in the next chapter. Yet he is told by the caretaker if he reaches level 100, then he can revive a monster. And so the story and training begins. The dialogue was rough with this one, despite how little there was to read, and after the initial hook of a sentimental premise, the generic nature of this type of story immediately kicks in. So far, everything has either been exactly what I expected, or just worse in ways I didn't see coming. You won't believe the name of this one. This has 21 chapters and is called After School Bitchcraft. A female student wants to be a vet and is doing poorly in her classes and ends up finding out her chemistry teacher is actually a sorcerer. Which, by the way, side note, the teacher kind of looks like that one smug anime character from Classroom of the Elite. I'm forgetting his name, but I've seen some cringe-ass videos on how to manipulate or behave like that. Which, by the way, if you seriously watch videos on how to behave like Light, Johan, or any other character that can be classified as a manipulative psycho, you're a loser, respectfully. I can't think of anything positive for this other than the title got a good laugh out of me. I have nothing more I want to say about this. It's just an excuse to have erotic panels. Let's just move on. I believe this one actually has an anime and is pretty well known. A part of me has wanted to check it out before, but now I have a reason. Do you love your mom and her multi-target attacks? Yay, another isekai-like fantasy RPG setting. But this time, it's a boy being in this world with his mom, who is the overpowered one. The comedy in this one does offer something, I guess, considering it's a mom having no clue about anything regarding how RPGs work, how video games work, and how one should go about certain things. So in that sense, I can see this having an appeal because of that. Also because of the mom of the story, they gave her one hell of a design. The more I read stories in this setting, the harder it gets, especially with the characters, since they all fall into a trope really hard for the most part, to the point where the dialogue of the characters is dialogue from whatever trope they belong to and not dialogue catered to the character, which shows there isn't a lot of thought put into this stuff beyond the premise. So often phrases and reactions tend to be very samey, the settings are always samey, but once again, the mom and her way of being is different from most manga I've read, given the setting they put her in. So this might have something worth checking out. Was this better than the title suggested? No, it wasn't. But it was, you know, it's not the worst thing on this list. I think there is potential possibly, considering that the end goal is for the main character to get closer to the mom. Therefore, that's the way of like beating the game. But I don't even know if they're continuing this. I don't care if they are. Moving on. You all know the Rising of the Shield Hero. Well, the first chapter of this manga is titled Something is Rising and It's Not the Shield Hero. And the manga itself is called Rising of the Vibrator Hero. I don't think I can even show a panel of this one. I'll try something creative. The main character is walking across the street with a bunch of products from Adam and Eve and gets hit by a truck and wakes up in another world and is attacked by a female knight, which he defeats with his legendary weapon. But then the female knight is like, Ashen One. She doesn't sadly say Ashen One, but you know how this goes. You're the chosen one, and so he has to rise up to the challenge and be the hero, hence the title. This manga is really special, since it's the only series I'm aware of where the title of each chapter is somehow far worse than the title of the manga itself. What was I even talking about again? It's just all starting to bleed and blur together. I feel like I've reviewed Konosuba or mentioned in this video, but I know I haven't, since that's actually funny. I'm actually dying. The final manga, thank God we're at the final one. The final series is called My Little Sister Makes the Best... My Little Sister Makes the Best Masturbation Material. I'm just gonna post one panel from this manga. That will say more than I ever could. Yeah, that's enough. Not a single of these were better than the title. Not one. I never want to do this again. Like, subscribe, unsubscribe. I wouldn't even blame you. Merch, Patreon. I'm going to rethink some of my life decisions. Blessed rest of the day and peace.